What's up, everybody? How are you all doing out there? This is Call to Action's first in a long time attempt at reviewing a movie. And what a movie we have decided to review. It's a movie that everyone loves to the utmost. There's no divisive opinions about it anywhere throughout the galaxy.
None at all.
None whatsoever.
We're reviewing Cats, the greatest movie of all time.
We are reviewing.
And we lost all our viewers.
Star Wars Episode 9.
Star Wars!
The Rise of Skywalker. And with me today, we have some of the very best hosts the internet has to offer, and James Spence. We have, first on the side of me, Kelsey Kins. How are you doing, girl?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to get to talk about Star Wars. My family and friends outside of the Schmodown world are really tired of hearing about it, so I'm glad to be able to bring it to a new audience.
Good to know. Good to see. And the aforementioned gaping chest wound, how do you feel? All right, we don't care about you. Anyway, and also a special guest we have today. Go ahead, James. I'm kidding. Go ahead, James. How are you?
As the person here who's seen Star Wars the least, I have the loudest opinion, so this will be fun.
Expect nothing else from you, James.
That's very true. And with us today is a special guest, a reunion of sorts to those who haven't watched us in a long time, an OG member of the Call to Action podcast, Mr. Michael Zambless. Good to have you back on the review, Michael. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me back. It's been a while. Over a year, actually.
It's been that long, right? Over a year. And yet in the comments, you were right on board with the James hatred, so it's like you never left.
Well, you know what? I'm coming back. Half the hosts are new. I need to ingratiate myself to the new crowd. Yep. And how better to do that than just shitting on James Spence? I mean,
smart man.
It does work. It does work. What in doubt is probably always my go-to. When in doubt, not knowing what to say.
I go where the wind blows. You know.
Anyway,
I was with you. Me, you, and Danny, we liked the artsy fartsy movies, and you abandoned me. You betrayed me. How dare you?
It seems like the world betrayed you at some point, James.
Yep, 20 and a half years ago, it betrayed me by birthing me into this.
All right, so welcome to Call to Action's new live therapy show.
All right. Well, we're on doing into that. Let's get into the movie. This is going to be a full, in-depth spoiler review for as long as we can go. If we go, 2.5 hours, like PJ Campbell, I would love that. I would love to do that. But I would love to do 2.5, 3 hours because that's the kind of movie I can deep dive into without any difficulties at all. But we probably don't have that long because I know I have to go to work about an hour and a half. So let's just get right into it. Do you want to do initial non-spoiler thoughts? Just maybe a quick sentence sum up your experience without trying to spoil before we go right into the spoilers? Ooh. Kelsey, hit you first.
Okay, I guess if I'm going to just put it in like a sentence, this is my least favorite of anything but the sequels. Well, no, and maybe, yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. Spence?
Going to be last. I'm trying to find the tweet I actually put out after I saw it.
Fine. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
This movie was bad and dumb.
Dumb.
Not in that order. But I, unlike many people on the internet, have a life. Therefore, my dislike of this movie is not going to bum me out for years to come. And I just want to put that out there as a blanket statement because I have not been tuning into like what the online conversation surrounding this film is, but Star Wars has a way of bringing things out of people that I hope we don't see any of during this show or in the years to come about this movie, because there are a lot of worse things that could happen to us than a bad Star Wars movie. So that's my little PSA before we start the review.
I like that.
Dislike this film responsibly, please.
That is a great sentiment, I will have to say. Before I get to mine and James, I will want to point out that John Mariano saw the best version of this film when Leia and Ben Bateman worked together to have Andrew Ghai turn face. And Ed Harris was monologue in the open and crawl. That would actually probably be my favorite Star Wars movie of all time.
No, see, it wasn't the best version because he wasn't singing it and then led into an Appaloosa musical.
That's true.
I've done my research.
Yeah, I made you do your research on that. Well, did you find your tweets, James, or do you want me to say my thoughts on the movie first?
I did not. I can sum it up.
What?
I think this is the worst written Star Wars movie. This isn't to say with the dialogue or anything. I just think the plotting is so terrible, just flat out terrible, that it doesn't embarrass me, but I'm embarrassed for the filmmakers for creating this. And my biggest concern is I think it's going the way of Game of Thrones, where once people sort of ingratiate themselves with this existing, they'll stop caring about the sequel trilogy. Just like how people sort of like stop talking about Game of Thrones, even though the first 5 seasons are incredible. People are going to stop caring about this whole Rey, Finn, Poe group in like 10 years.
Okay. That's actually, I don't necessarily disagree with you a little to all full-on extent as far as the impact of the sequel trilogy. But I will say I'm probably one of the few people on this of the whole planet, maybe in this little section of our community, as we will, to say I unabashedly loved it. I did have problems with it. That's not going to say that anything that you guys have said so far I have agreed with to a certain extent. It just was never enough to overwhelm the kid in me, the inner kid in me, which let out. And beyond pew pew and lightsaber, I found a lot of feeling within the movie. And perhaps it's because I'm so ingratiated in the universe. That might be. But I found enough to keep me going. And I had enough emotions at the end where at the end not the best of the Star Wars films, but certainly far from the dumpster fire that some people are making it out to be. So we'll start with that. As far as go, why don't we start from the beginning?
Okay.
The first section of the film.
A long time ago.
A long time
galaxy
ago.
far, far away.
In the galaxy far, far away.
Wait, can we start? Just get into it already?
Go ahead. Yes,
Hate
that's
the opening crawl.
you seem like you can't help yourself, so go ahead. Let's go with that.
Hate the opening crawl. Because you know why? Within 2 seconds, Last Jedi, get the fuck out of here. Throw it away. Immediately.
Okay. I love crawls of Star Wars. Like that is like I usually tear up the second they pop up the screen. No matter how many times I've seen the movie, I start welling up because I'm so excited. I did that on the first time I watched the movie. I did not well up at all the second and third time. So the crawls didn't speak to me the way other ones did. I don't know why, per se. Maybe because kind of like what James said, it kind of... I love The Last Jedi, so it kind of bothered me a little bit.
Okay, I get that. I would say that the opening crawl did not hit me the right way at first. I didn't really notice it the first time through. I kind of was just too excited. The second and third viewings, I got it. And honestly, I loved it the third time more than I loved it any other time. And I think it's because it reminded me of the old school serial kind of things that Lucas first loved Star Wars. He first based his Star Wars love on those serials from the early days of his childhood. I've seen some of those early serials, and it's exactly the same type of thing. There's this big over bombast with a big vocal thing. It's not supposed to be in depth, not supposed to be intricate. It's just this is what it is, and it's loud. And at the end of the day, is it really that big of a deal either way? The Carl could have said Skywalkers are here, they're going to go fuck with something, and it wouldn't matter. It would just be that it's moving on to the next part. But that's just me. Michael, what did you think of the crawl?
I'm going to be honest. I kind of laughed out loud when it happened. Like, it is the start of a running trend throughout the whole film, wherein every second is dedicated to delivering as much exposition as possible while saying remarkably little about any of it. Like, there's so much dialogue in this film that is supposed to make things easier to understand and only makes things more confusing. And the crawl is kind of the start of that, because I think there's an assumption that, like, okay, we're all caught up now, but we're very much not. It's like, wait, what? And I mean, it's. I feel like we can spoil the crawl because it's the crawl, right?
Okay.
It's like the.
We can start spoilers now if you want.
Let's just start spoilers. I can't talk about this movie without spoiling.
Yeah. And in a few minutes,
okay.
What? Yes, James?
Before we jump into spoilers, can we at least give like a very like flat rating of the movie?
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
I don't do numerical ratings, so I just give it a thumbs down.
Okay.
I usually do out of 5, and I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 10.
So we're both the same. We're both giving 4s.
Only time me and Paul will ever be on the same
James
page.
just gave himself 5 extra opportunities to like the film, and he just didn't take them. Essentially, it's the same rating.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
By the way, in a few minutes, I may have to briefly disconnect because my phone is on really low battery, and I'm using my laptop to charge it. So I may have to plug it into a wall outlet
Okay.
so that
Fair
I
enough.
don't die. But anyway, so the crawl straight up
Okay.
tells us that Palpatine is alive, which the trailers already did. But it's like, oh, how did that happen? And the crawl is like, well, it just did. Now deal with it, and
Deal
we're going to do
with
this.
Well, to me,
Like-
I want to interject right there because I thought about that today. That was one of the big things I had to say about that. He did do that, but I didn't care, and here's why. This is not like a documentary. This is a childlike adventure serial, sci-fi fantasy thing. In a movie and a series, when you have dark side magic, cloning, Sith's temples, it can be easily whiled away to the past of the dark side, unusual abilities, everything you want. It's enough is hinted in there where you can come to your own conclusion. And I think making it something specific would have been bad. They wanted Palpatine back. They brought him back, and that didn't bother me. I think it's one of the things like you got to lay into that. There's magic that happens in these films, and she's I can't.
Action cat.
You're out of here, Clay.
My
Something
cat, who
happened.
is named Kylo, is locked away because he would want to do that too.
Boom. So to me, I get why some people have a problem with it, but to me, I didn't bother me because they said that basically that's what in the crawl when they said that, that's what them saying. You're not going to find out exactly why, so just get over it and move on. That's okay to me. That's okay to me. I love
that. Was half the dialogue in this movie was get over it and move
Get
on.
over
It's
it.
like, we're doing this now, and that's just where the movie
You just
is.
gotta accept it. There's
part of
no
that problem.
reason why.
Part of that problem before you, James, you keep your arm down. I got you coming up. Part of that problem is, and we're going to get into this whole thing eventually, but it has to do with what James said. Obviously, JJ did not approve where Rian Johnson had taken the saga, and that's the biggest flaw of the whole trilogy. Is that either JJ should have done all 3 movies, or Rian should have done all 3 movies, because there's a disconnect there that was hard to get over. And people blame JJ for subverting Rian Johnson, but let's face it, I love Rian Johnson, but he did pretty much the same thing to The Force Awakens with The Last Jedi, because JJ had set up some things in The Force Awakens that Rian Johnson was like, just like literally like the beginning of the movie. This is the Force Awakens stuff you got set up. And that's what Rian Johnson did. And people praised him for it.
But what I will say is the difference is that when Rian Johnson does it, I feel like something is being said that kind of has to be said. You know, he's sort of saying that, okay, we love this thing, we love this series, but you know, when you think about a lot of the kind of heroic narratives that are, you know, huge now, they espouse a lot of ideas that maybe we want to start distancing ourselves from. And, you know, they say a lot of things that maybe we need to start critically interrogating a little bit more. And to that, you know, J.J. Abrams has 2 options. One is to build on that argument, or 2, craft an interesting rebuttal to it. And he might be trying the latter, but effectively what happens is that he creates a movie whose entire point is to say, Star Wars is awesome, and you're awesome for liking it, and Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars, and I'm going to shoot Star Wars all over your face, and you're going to love it. And, you know, that is, it's you know, it's a 2-hour commercial for itself is essentially what it is. It's a movie about how great its own series is, which is a trend. You know, Endgame was effectively the same thing. And I think Endgame was a better crafted movie than this. But I think it's just such a less interesting thing to say than what Rian Johnson was getting at.
Okay, let me rebut that. Actually, I have an interesting rebuttal. I do have to say that I agree 110% what you're saying. But you got to remember, this is the 9th film of a 9-part saga. So the 8th film is not the place to start that kind of subversion, that kind of throwing it out. I love Rian Johnson as a movie maker. I love The Last Jedi as a movie. That should have been, Rian Johnson should have his own place in the Star Wars universe, a completely different saga. You can't change everything at the last minute. And what JJ had to do at the end was say, okay, I got to wrap everything. I can't do a clever rebuttal on this because I need to wrap this whole thing up. So at this point, JJ's like, I got to make 2 movies in one now. And that's where bad parts of the not bad. I don't think it's bad, but the rushed parts of the film happen.
See, and I feel like I think 8 is fine. Okay, 9 would have been a problem, but 8 is fine because okay, it's the end of the Skywalker saga. Doesn't mean they're not going to do Star Wars 400 years from that timeline where they're still living the effects of what happened in 8 and 9. So even though there won't be a 10, that doesn't mean we can't see where that then goes in the future. We just won't see it with the same cast of characters necessarily,
Which is why you open up a new saga with that, to me. Or even a different saga. When you're trying to wrap up this is called the Skywalker saga. And yet the main character is not a Skywalker anymore. And of course, what Ryan Johnson wanted to say.
Yeah.
And that makes it wrong to me. That bothers
it's not a Skywalker.
Me. That bothers me.
That's my opinion at the end of the movie.
Well, but I think that's why it's so interesting because as Kelsey's saying that the main character of the Skywalker saga turns out not to be a Skywalker is kind of part of the point that Ryan Johnson is trying to make. The story is set up to be one thing. It's the story about dynastic heroism, and it ends up realizing that maybe that's not what we should be venerating so much as, individual accomplishment and people, forming their own communities and deciding who they want to be, not based on what came before, not based on the media they consume or the people who birthed them or the people who mentored them, but based on the sum of their own experiences. And J.J. Abrams, I think does kind of agree with what you're saying, Paul, because he was really eager to wrap everything up in a nice, satisfying bow. And I didn't need this movie to be satisfying.
Yes.
I was very okay watching the end of the Skywalker saga and feeling a little bit uncomfortable with open-endedness.
Yes.
I think that's what we might have gotten with like a Ryan Johnson episode 9. And J.J. Abrams is so eager to resolve everything in one film. I think the only two things you need to resolve are Rey's character arc and Kylo Ren's character arc. Those are the only two things he had to do. So all of, everything everyone's saying about like, oh, there was so much that needed to get wrapped up, there really wasn't that much. In fact, when you look at how many elements J.J. introduced to this film, all of the new characters and bringing Palpatine back and all that, he gave himself an unnecessary storytelling burden with all of the kind of the whole construct of the plot.
I'm digesting.
Yeah,
I see. Go ahead, James.
I love this.
Go ahead, James.
Oh, no, y'all moved on from the point I wanted to make, so I'll come back to it later. Don't worry.
Now we can't hear James.
I can hear James.
So, you can?
I could. Talk, James.
Hello.
I can
am
hear him.
person.
Can you not hear him, Michael?
I cannot.
Weird.
Oh.
Weird.
'Cause I can hear him. Okay, well, James.
You're starting to develop a tuning out James thing. We're all trying to do that.
Yeah, Michael, you are
You
my
mastered it.
best
When I
person I can
find
ever
out what
be
this
in.
glitch is, I'm going to start selling it to everyone and start making bank.
Start a Kickstarter. I'll pay.
Okay, so to me, I will
Kidding,
just
just
back
kidding.
in. Again, I agree with a lot of Ryan's concept. I just think it's too late in the game to develop that. That's just my own personal opinion. That's where our opinions are obviously going to differ. I want to know what happened to the Skywalker saga. I want to know what happened to the Skywalkers. And I think JJ even went a little bit back on his way to give making Rey not a Skywalker, but making her a Palpatine was a interesting choice. I didn't love that person myself, but at the end of the day, this is one that people hated. I know people hated. I love the fact that she called herself a Skywalker at the end, because that, to me, actually supports Ryan's ideas that he tried to introduce away, is that you can be who you choose to be. And because at the end of the day, after talking with Luke, after learning from Leia, she made her choice that she's going to be a Skywalker. So it's a perfect way to wrap the Skywalker saga. We have no lineage left in the Skywalkers, but we do have the rise of a Skywalker as a choice, as an ideal. So to me, that was a hopeful ending. I love that part.
Yeah, but I think he's trying to have it both ways, because ultimately, sure, you could say that, okay, she's choosing this Skywalker lineage as her own, and she's choosing her identity. But first of all, she would not have a place in this story if it wasn't for her bloodline. Is kind of the claim that the movie makes, whether it wants to or not. And two, this does something that The Force Awakens did too, which has always bothered me about the sequel trilogy. And I generally like the sequel trilogy. I'm not crazy about it, but I enjoy it. Which is that the characters in this series all are in-universe Star Wars fans. and they define themselves by their love of Star Wars, and it kind of validates that. And if anything, The Last Jedi demonstrated how necessary Rian Johnson's message about the perils of defining yourself that way really is. You've got Kylo Ren, who's a Darth Vader fanboy, who, you know, like, you have that as the villain. You have Finn, Poe, and Rey, who are all, like, you know, wide-eyed at the mere mention of Luke Skywalker or any hero from the original trilogy. There's even that moment where they're like, they call out C-3PO for, like, mansplaining Lando to them. It's just super bizarre. They're like, C-3PO, we all know who Lando is. We're not fake nerds, okay? Like, so,
Love it.
and even like Rey in The Force Awakens has like a toy of like an X-wing pilot or something like that, you know. So the way in which the J.J. Abrams' Star Wars films kind of heroicize Star Wars fandom makes me uncomfortable. And Rey taking the name Skywalker at the end is kind of the final, the nail in the coffin for what the series is, which is about like people cosplaying Star Wars within the Star Wars universe.
Well, part of that is also, I will interject, is to say that I like the sequel trilogy too, but I had a problem with the trilogy from the get-go. And the point is, when it comes down to basic storytelling, when you're creating a universe, you're creating a set of characters, you always want to tell people, you want to tell the most interesting, most important story of that time, which is why prequels, for the most part, don't work, which is why sequels sometimes don't work, because everything else has got to be less important. And when George Lucas had his original trilogy, and because the prequels were actually added to it, the most important storyline in Galaxy Far, Far Away is the rise, the fall, and eventual redemption of Anakin Skywalker with the help from his son, Luke Skywalker. We had a happy ending with Return of the Jedi. Anything that happens after that is almost automatically either less important or it will cheapen the story to a degree, to a point where it can never hit quite the same level that it ever would. So in a way, I almost wish in hindsight, as much as I love the sequel trilogy, I love visiting that thing. I love seeing old Luke, love seeing old Han, revisiting those characters. I almost feel like we should have gotten totally different, so far removed that wasn't connected at all, because that's the only place you can go to be fully satisfied, which is why some people are great with Mandalorian, with Rogue One type thing, because it's so far more removed. But go ahead, James. I know you're about to have a heart attack or some kind of seizure over there.
I'm next.
Thank you for making my point for me, Paul.
Oh.
Yeah, so to me, I forget who mentioned it, but I heard someone else say this. The inclusion of Palpatine in this movie devalues the entirety of the original trilogy. Because suddenly, this massive journey he had to take down the Sith, Darth Vader, Anakin's sacrifice to save him, the 9 years of journey mean nothing, because he just comes back. Nothing Luke did mattered, really. That's
the problem with the whole sequel
Lost
trilogy.
Vader for nothing.
To be honest.
Real quick, I'm going to leave and come back to see if I can hear James. If I do, because I don't want to, have this conversation this way.
Okay.
Right.
I will tell you that's the fundamental problem I have with the idea of the sequel trilogy to begin with. No doubt. I had to take it, like when Disney bought Star Wars, I got over the fact like, oh, Star Wars being created again. I love it. I love it. Love it. I had to get over that next fact that, okay, well, it still does. No matter what they do, it's going to cheapen it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had to go get over that a long time ago. So maybe that might be why I'm not so bothered with it in 9, because I've already gotten over it like 6 years ago.
And here's the thing, like,
so
if they would have ended it in a fresh new way, maybe it would have given it value, but they ended it the same freaking way they did before, where the Kylo Ren had to die to redeem himself. And so it's the exact same story, like, all over again. We didn't learn anything. We just did the same shit all over again. That's why I think if a different ending would have happened, it could have given that whole series meaning, because, like, okay, we learned that didn't work last time. We're now starting off we ended it in a different way. Maybe this time it actually worked. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
I get what you're saying.
It was the way this ended made the whole series pointless. If it would have ended differently, maybe it would have given value to it, but it didn't. So,
I get what you're saying. At the same time, I think this actually has to turn into why Ben had to die was more of a statement. I think as of right now, I mean, this thing's obviously changed. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we might get more adventure with Rey and whatever. But I think the plan right now is we need to find a way to completely end this Skywalker saga. The only way you can end the Skywalker saga is to have no more Skywalkers. Because the end of 6, the end of the 6, Luke Skywalker's alive and well and ready to go. He's continuing adventures.
Yeah.
Now there are no more Skywalkers, so there is no more Skywalker saga now. Rey is a Skywalker, but that's the open-endedness you can have and still have it be completed.
Well, see, the thing is... Go ahead, Michael.
Well, yeah, I personally think that it's a massive cop-out to kill off Ben Solo for the simple reason that they've already done this before, and Star Wars is essentially saying at this point, and Disney is saying, family-friendly Disney, that if you do something wrong, the only way to make up for it is to die. And
he committed genocide on multiple occasions.
Yeah,
he did not blow up the 5 planets.
Okay,
that wasn't him.
Here's my question. If Ben survived that, is he morally obligated to kill himself?
Yes.
Because if he has to die, that's the kind of question that Disney needs to get into, because Disney's taking the easy way out. It is removing his responsibility from his death and just conveniently killing him so we don't have to think about that. Alternatives are, and this would be way too dark for a Disney movie, but have him commit ritualistic suicide at the end, which is essentially what they're saying he should do without actually showing it. Or B, have him go off and go into seclusion and meditate for the rest of his life or something, or start a goddamn charity and hope that the karmic balance restores itself by the end. But what, I'm interested in this question of what does redemption look like to them? Because the only thing they've shown me redemption looks like is you doing precisely one good thing to a person you already care about and then dying.
Yep.
Wait,
amen.
Side note. He didn't need, crash that. It was impossible for him to die in the rules of the universe because him and Rey are force dyads, or whatever the term is. Isn't it that they can't die on their own? They need both of them to die for it to actually be final?
They're fast and loose with a lot of the rules as far as that goes. And that's a lot of expanded universe stuff. That's a lot of expanded universe stuff. They didn't actually say that in the movie. About what the dyad. I actually haven't looked at the dyad stuff and the deeper list. They never said
that was another
that.
thing they said, is if we're supposed to know what that is.
So I don't think that's actually a hard. I don't know where you get that rule from, James.
I had a friend talking about it last night. It's like, oh wow, that actually makes sense because they mentioned the force dyad thing, like they were perfectly balanced.
I get that. I mean, well, it is kind of balanced in a way because Rey died and then Ben brought her back to life. And
Wait. Side note.
It's not balanced though, because she is pure light. There's no balance without. Okay, if I can get to a point where I can pitch my ending, I would like to. So just let me know when I can.
Is she pure? Really, Rey is pure light.
If Luke was almost, yeah, pretty much. That's what at the end, because she contemplated, but she always made the right decision, right?
That's not pure. Pure is without decision. Pure is without hesitation. Just
okay. But anyways, that's not my point was. What I would have had to end. Them both be alive. He has been to the dark side. She has looked at it because she's been tempted. He has also returned to the good. She's a good. They have seen all facets of dark and light. What is pure balance in that non-canon stuff? The Gray Jedi. I feel like this could have started the Gray Jedi into future movies, and all of us freaking video game it would have been good, and it would have been different than the old trilogy. It would have been something new, something refreshing. It could have been the Rian Johnson trilogy or whatever you want to make it. That's how I wanted it to end, is it to then bring a new Jedi and it be quote unquote the Gray Jedi.
That's where I thought it was going to go, because originally I thought when it was the Rise of Skywalker, I thought it was going to be the Jedi are gone, but the Skywalkers are the new, the label of Force holders, the lightsaber wielders. They are the new, figures of peace within the galaxy. And they could be the Grey Jedi because of the new name. And that would have worked in continuing under Rian Johnson's themes. Yep. But it didn't.
I never liked that, actually. I heard that theory floated. Just me, it just seems like the Skywalker becoming the name of a... I don't know.
I would have liked that, but I would have liked it better than what happened.
Okay. We did the ending. We did the beginning. We kind of split the.
I asked if you
because nothing happened in the middle. It was all pointless filler.
Well, Once again, nothing happened, and yet way too much happened. Like they went to like 10 planets and did the same thing at each one of them, which was like, we gotta find the other thing now.
It's like Rogue One,
scavenger
but
hunt.
worse.
Why are there like 4 MacGuffins in this film? It's so bizarre. Like, I do want to mention about the ending though.
Go ahead.
One thing I really loved about The Last Jedi that I think a lot of people take issue with is I think that people, like in the lead up to that film, and thankfully I really was not paying attention to much of the marketing or anything in the lead up to this film, or really much of the online discourse. But I remember in the lead up to The Last Jedi, everyone was talking about like, oh, we're going to see like how powerful Luke Skywalker is. And it was such a like, my dad can beat up your dad kind of thing with you know, the way they were like treating him. But I think back to, you know, what Yoda says in The Empire Strikes Back, wars not make one great. And the way that Luke finds a way to heroically sacrifice himself in a way that is still like non-violent, and he's totally kind of embraced the role that Yoda kind of handed down to him. And in a franchise whose wisest character gives us that lesson that wars not make one great, we have a series that ends with a woman taking 2 laser swords and melting a man's face off with them by deflecting his lightning back at him in a horrifically violent moment.
Wait. Another thing. Why is she not the ultimate Sith now? His whole thing was
kill me and you will have my power. Yep.
Become the ultimate power. And then she does it, and then nothing happens.
Well, because I mean, to me, that was the idea. The idea to me was that she had to do it willingly, knowing what was going on, knowing that she was going to accept him into her. Like that was the idea. Like he was going to accept the spirit into her and do it for that reason. This was more of a defensive Jedi being on defense. He was attacking her with like the Sith lightning, and defending the back.
Thousands of ghosts all knew consents. That just seems a little stupid for ghosts.
Or maybe we're reading the ending wrong. Maybe when she takes the name Skywalker, she's like, well, if I'm going to be evil, like, who's really fucked the galaxy lately? Like, oh.
wait. I love that.
and then she goes to this planet that Anakin hated and that Luke wanted to get out of. She stares at Luke and Leia with this shit-eating grin on her face, like "fuck you too, buddy," and buries their lightsabers.
In
like,
sand.
Stay here forever.
In sand.
We'll see. We're gonna get the opening to episode 10, and she's gonna go to whatever Canto Bight and kill all of the younglings. Boom, dark ray. Boom, double lightsaber. And then in that one we can get Storm Pilot, we can get more random ships people wanted, we can get we can get the Mandalorian but the 20th version, like pure fan service.
Okay, well, here's a topic I want to bring up. I want to bring up tonight at some point. How they handled Leia.
Okay.
I want your thoughts on any of that.
Bad.
It was
so
awful.
bad.
Like let's be honest.
Yeah, no, it was very clearly like they just said, here's some extra footage, and we need a reason for her to leave. Let's just do what we can. Because they reused exact scenes from other movies along with the behind-the-scenes footage, and she was pretty much ancillary and sort of just used for no good reason. Like, I hate how Kylo, to lose the fight, needed to be distracted by her. Like, that just doesn't sit right with me for some reason.
I actually think that's one of the moments
I like
that
most.
worked.
Yeah.
That was what, yeah.
That was probably, to me, the moment that Kylo turns is probably a highlight of the film, because they managed to actually use Carrie Fisher well in that moment. In all the moments in the Resistance base, it's so clear that they're like, okay, we have this line of dialogue that doesn't really make much sense in any context. So how do we get there with some lame joke? And she's like, it's always
listen to a droid. We gotta throw a droid in there somewhere. Dio, go.
So exactly, like they have to make the conversation about droids for no reason all of a sudden, because that's the only line of dialogue they have with her that even remotely makes sense. But with Kylo Ren's turning, they're able to do it in a way that is tasteful, that is elegant, and that for once for the first time in a fucking hour, the movie slows the fuck down to let these characters interact. And that's what I needed more of. Like, that's why we didn't need all of these new characters, and frankly, like at least 2 of these characters are there to establish the fact that Finn and Poe aren't gay. Like, let's be honest. Come on.
They are
You're not
they
wrong.
are
Right.
so gay. It has to be. It
Well-
is canon somewhere. I swear to God.
I would
Well,
like it
not,
if they were.
not if the Chinese market has its say, and that's what Disney wanted to do. It's like, don't
True.
worry, repressive governments. These people are straight, and yeah. So like, they waste all this time with just exposition and new characters and plot lines that don't really matter. And we see what this film could have been in that moment where Kylo Ren finally turns back. And it's a brilliant use of Leia, brilliant use of Harrison Ford, who could not give less of a shit about that scene and
Absolutely.
still knocks it out of the park.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I have
Like-
to interject one. Here's my little thing about that. I love that scene. 'Cause I love me some Han Solo. He's my favorite character of the entire saga. At least the original trilogy. And I love seeing Harrison Ford one more time. That actually surprised me. I was not
Yeah.
made aware of that at all. But I do think that one thing could have been done better as far as making it the whole. If you're going to connect the sagas together, all 9, and connect the characters together, I almost wanted to see a Force Ghost of Anakin in there. The
Okay,
reason
but he
being-
was in the film.
The reason being, oh no, I know he wasn't. I know he was part of the voices.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
but in that
I
scene,
want that scene. I mentioned this at one point. I always thought that Anakin should be there because the best way that Kylo could have really established his going back to the light was he could say something to the effect of you've been following me your whole life, been trying to follow my example. You seem to forget the ending is that I returned to the light. So can you, kind of thing. And I just think that could have connected the whole saga better together a little bit more.
Yes, but like there's less of a personal connection there, and the worst thing we've seen Kylo Ren do is murder his own father.
yeah.
He committed
And-
genocide.
He
I mean,
didn't
a lot
blow
of
up
that
the
happened-
planets.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
Hux is the one that was the Navy. That was Hux. That wasn't a Sith apprentice that called that order. That was
Also-
the military. That was Hux.
You didn't
Not
do a whole
Kylo.
lot.
Also, because it was Hux, that moment plays as hilarious, not tragic. Because everything Hux does in any of the movies is funny, and
they're
I
right
will defend him as my favorite sequel series character.
I like Hux.
He's so goofy. I love him. I would watch an entire sitcom about Hux.
I love that. I
Oh,
love
wait,
that.
and they wasted him too.
No, I think he didn't waste it because they needed him, or they needed the spy angle. I like the spy. I thought it worked because it's not like if they had not gave him the out of his last bit of dialogue he had, that it wouldn't have worked. Because him being a spy was ridiculous. But then when he says he doesn't care about them, he just wants Kylo Ren to lose. That sums up his character entirely. He didn't give a shit about the First Order.
Yeah. I mean, no, he was
about what he could
he
get.
was like the definition of a one-dimensional character. So yeah, he just tries to fuck over Kylo Ren. He loses because he's terrible at everything, and then he gets shot by Richard E. Grant. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Wait.
I laughed out loud when he died, and I was absolutely satisfied with his arc in this film.
Wait, Richard E. Grant, greatest character of the sequel trilogy? Question mark. He is up there. He is
I loved
phenomenal in
him.
this.
We just established it's Hux.
He's a
And-
solid number 2.
He is definitely he was my favorite, probably of the newly introduced characters in this movie, and probably the only one I see as kind of necessary because
Because Ryan kind of screwed over Hux a little bit.
yeah, I'll admit Ryan kind of made Hux look like a joke a little bit.
Not that
but
Hux was established well with in the Force Awakens. He was still kind of one note there, but then kind of Ryan Johnson turned it on his ear once Ryan had his way in Last Jedi. There was no coming back from making that like Hux look any kind of intimidating at all. So they had to go with the continuation.
Although going back to your point, Paul, about the ways in which that scene with Han Solo could have been a little better, I think that's. Oh,
Yes,
James
we all
is
love
giving
that.
yet another admirable but wrong answer.
No. Babu Frick is
But-
the
he
greatest
was
thing since Baby
adorable.
Yoda.
He was.
Fabu Frick is fine. I love Fabu Frick.
Yeah. So, but what I was saying is that one thing that detracts from that moment between Han and Kylo Ren that is not this movie's fault, but is the fact that this trilogy we never really got to see Kylo Ren before he was Kylo Ren.
Mhm.
We never got to see him interact with Luke Skywalker or Han Solo back when they were his father and mentor, respectively. So his confrontations with these characters in the other movies of this trilogy feel a little weird because they're the first time we're seeing him interact with these characters. And I think that Adam Driver was great in the brief amount of time that we saw him as Ben Solo again.
Yeah.
And it made me wish that, The Force Awakens spends so much time introducing characters like Finn and Rey and Poe, that if you had just had Rey as like an established Jedi character in The Force Awakens and have that movie end with Kylo Ren falling, then moments like that might have played a little better.
I knew that.
But I mean, obviously, once again, like I'm not detracting from this film because of things that happened in other films necessarily, but it is a little weird where it's like I feel like I should be more engaged, but this is literally the second scene these two characters have together in this entire trilogy. So and I mean, he and Leia like constantly have these moments, but they're never actually seen face to face in any of the films, which is super weird.
Well, I have a feeling we would have seen that if it hadn't been for Carrie's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. That's the thing I got to going back to.
Maybe that's how they guilted Harrison Ford into it. It's like, you're not going to do a favor for your dead friend, you asshole.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I do think they had a hard one of the hardest decisions you could have had with Carrie. There was no right answer that would have satisfied everybody anyway. So with what they came up with, I can't. Why it wasn't perfect, but I can't bash a lot of what they did. And like you said, Michael, actually, I do agree that it worked with Kylo as far as that goes. It needed to happen some way, and they did the best they could with it.
Okay, since it was brought up, I'm just going to real quick. One second. The best part of the freaking movie, okay?
He's the only
Kylo Ren,
one who
Ben
matters.
Solo. He's the only one that matters. All the actors I feel like did good job in the movie. I wouldn't say like anyone's like that person didn't do a good job, but I feel like every scene he was in, Adam Driver stole the movie. He's the only reason I went back on for a third viewing is because like I wanted to watch him as those parts again. So I just had to put that out there. I think he was the best person in the movies.
Oh, Adam Driver was phenomenal. There's no doubt about that. He's a great actor. I wish we could see more of him as Ben Solo, but
Same.
I think like specific praise needs to be given to the fact that he basically redid a scene line for line with Harrison Ford, and he sold it in an entirely new direction.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Almost verbatim, the same words, but whole new meaning behind them.
Had it not been for Florence Pugh, Adam Driver would be giving the best overall performance this year as an actor. In this, Dead Don't Die, The Reports, A Marriage Story. Like, he is phenomenal. No one else is anywhere near him besides, Florence Pugh, a goddess.
Okay. And the chat's giving me a hard time.
I do feel like some of the actors in this movie, while great, and I think one of the things that I think everyone can agree on is that despite the initial backlash that a lot of people had, all of the actors in the sequel trilogy have done a great job with the roles they're given, regardless of how well or poorly written those roles may have been. I do feel like some people, and maybe it's partly because of the backlash The Last Jedi got, and they were like, this ain't worth it. Like, a lot of people felt a little bit checked out of this one. I think, Daisy Ridley didn't give a bad performance, but this was probably her worst performance in the trilogy. I didn't feel like, her heart was in it as much. Speaking of things that they, it's not that her role is worse, but they significantly reduced it. I think we need to talk about Kelly Marie Tran as well, because we're talking about the ways that The Last Jedi is getting slapped in the face. Dude, it's like they literally have her ask, like, should I come, a really important character from the last film on the final adventure? And they're like, nah, stay here. They need you off screen.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like,
okay, well,
you're going to be doing very important things here at the base with your computers, your technicians.
You don't need to see it.
We'll see.
I do think that one of the ideas here, again, there's a lot of, I don't want to really get into the controversy, the political side of things. There's a lot of people who say that it was because misogynistic fanboys hated her or whatever. I love Kelly Marie Tran. I wasn't a huge fan of the character of Rose, to be honest with you, The Last Jedi. She didn't really do a whole lot for me, but I get why she touched some people. But to me, I wonder how much of JJ's decision was based in less in something like that and more in the fact that he was trying to recapture the big three, Chewie and droids angle. Of Han, Leia, Luke, and droids and Chewie and the Falcon. For the final adventure, the final time, you have this big three or whatever for the first time without having any other interactions. The first time you have Finn, Poe, and Rey with Chewie and droids. And so I don't know if that's what he was trying to do. I don't know for sure. Although I will add back on the other side of the fact is that Kelly gets shafted even more than that. And the fact is, like, the fact that Dominic Monaghan's character was basically created, took even more lines away from the little lines she had. Like, his character was so pointless, except to say stuff that Kelly Marie Tran could have said while there's
It's true.
That's what, as much as I love Dominic Monaghan too, but basically that's where she was.
Yeah, they could have combined both the roles together, given it all to Rose, and would have given her more to work with at least. You know
And
what I mean?
Rose could even have done something like Jana. Could have been the Jana character and done something different. I mean, obviously, it was kind of a different story. I know there was a subplot that was
once again, this comes back to like why are they then introducing all of these new characters if then they're gonna underserve a character like Rose? And I think frankly, I agree that I think that Kelly Marie Tran deserves the harassment that she got, but I think that ultimately. The character Rose didn't really land for me either. But I think there's something really interesting there in the idea that when you have, two trained soldiers in Finn and Poe, and you have basically Space Jesus in Rey, and then suddenly you bring in this character Rose, who's literally just like a mechanic, and you put her in with them. I think that it synergizes well thematically with what Rian Johnson was trying to say about kind of democratizing heroism a little bit more and saying that really anyone can do great things. You don't have to have a destiny. You don't have to, belong to one of the 3 professions or 2 families that matter. That anyone can rise to the occasion and do important things. And that's also why it's so unsettling the way they end this film, because JJ really is trying to have it both ways. He, with Finn's force sensitivity and with like the stormtroopers who help him rebel, and with a lot of these new characters, he is kind of saying, and that really hollow moment at the end where it's like, oh, it's just all these random people who came to help, but it's like we know Lando and none of the others, so we don't know who these people are.
Yeah, we saw Wedge.
She's there for blink and you'll miss him. I didn't even know.
I know. I was hoping for more of him
later. Yeah. But he's trying to also maintain this message that Rian Johnson laid out, where it's like, oh, regular people can do great things, but those people don't really do much. And Rey still kind of single-handedly, by virtue of the fact that she, by a chance of fate, is selected to be so powerful, she basically single-handedly vanquishes Palpatine. In fact, they even have weirdly Palpatine kind of shoves Kylo Ren out of the scene when Rey needs her big hero moment at the end in a way that was hilarious when you really look back on it. And then he emerges from the hole when the script needs him again.
Yeah.
But that those 2 things, the kind of egalitarianism of all these people showing up at the very end doesn't mesh with Rey as the sole hero who saves the day because she is so powerful and she comes from a powerful family and she is destined to do great things. Those don't live very well together thematically.
I guess it comes down to going back. It goes back to what I said before: is that JJ versus Ryan kills the saga, kills the trilogy aspect of it. Because if JJ has his thoughts in mind, he obviously started things in The Force Awakens. He obviously wanted to finish it with his thoughts in mind. He tried to incorporate Rian Johnson's. But it was just too late to try to introduce those themes and then try to wrap it up. Because it just would have been, if Rian Johnson ended the saga in the 9th episode, it would have ended in a different way. And it would have been daring. And I get where it could be satisfying to some people, but would it have sat thematically with the rest of the Skywalker saga? I don't think it would have. Not that this one does, because it didn't get a chance to end the way JJ really.
It's also, I think it's also Disney's fault for marking this as the end of the saga anyway. Because they're not fooling anyone. We know they're making more Star Wars movies. This is an arbitrary endpoint. And in fact, it doesn't really end anything anyway. They had to bring the Emperor back so that they could have something to end in the first place. Otherwise, it would just be like a story of Rey and Kylo Ren sitting down at the end to have a nice chat, which I would be perfectly fine with, by the way. But they could have done, they didn't have to have another trilogy, tradition, and do one last trilogy, because then you could bill this movie as the most important thing that everyone has to see. And they keep doing this. Pop culture has gotten to a point where we keep having these big releases that are billed as the end-all be-all, this huge thing, and it is this inflated artificial gravitas that these things are given because Endgame isn't the end of the MCU. And the Rise of Skywalker isn't the end of Star Wars. And the idea that like, oh, they couldn't get risque here because they're nearing the end. It's their choice to near the end here, because they didn't have to. There was nothing that they had to end.
Well, I agree and disagree. I agree because I agree. I agree with especially the pop culture reference, especially now just throwing in the whole Avengers Endgame thing. I got to be honest, this is a totally different topic and totally different schedule we can go off of. But I have a hard time getting excited about the MCU right now because I feel like it's already done. Like the saga ended with Avengers Endgame. Now everything else is kind of like, okay, well, what's next? We'll see. It's the same way with the Skywalker saga.
Yeah, guys, real quick, I'm gonna disconnect real quick, and then I'm gonna plug my phone in, and I'll come right back. But keep going without me. All right.
What I was going to say is that I feel that it is definitely an artificial ending of sorts. Obviously, it's actually 2022 or 23. I think is actually going to be the next Star Wars movie. Well, but I think that we can all safely say, to be honest with you, that the Skywalker saga ending will help the Star Wars universe in a billion kinds of way, because now we aren't so precious about the material. The Skywalker saga is where people are precious about the material. I mean, people are precious about Star Wars anyway, but I feel like with shows like The Mandalorian, it feels like the Knights of the Old Republic, if we ever go that, or we do something completely off kilter, we are not nearly as precious as, oh my God, I have Luke Skywalker in my head as something that, and you totally made it as a big ass badass warrior, and you made him a hermit. How dare you? Which, by the way, considering my side of things, I actually like Luke in The Last Jedi, so I'm really off topic there. By the way, I know the way I've been talking, I should sound like I should hate Luke, but I love Luke in The Last Jedi. But that's what I mean, though. There's not that preconceived notion of what we should do or what we need to do. So the Skywalker saga, having Disney say that the Skywalker saga is ending is going to be a good thing, because now it's like a fresh, cleanse the palate, start over. Let's get a Rian Johnson trilogy which explores all these fantabulous things and themes that he was starting. I'd love to see that now outside of the Skywalker saga.
See, and here's how I feel. Okay, so like you said, it's just a clean break now. So if anything happening that takes place after the Skywalker saga that isn't the Skywalker saga, it's separate, but it's after that, they're now starting 100% fresh. They could have used this trilogy to make it, like I said, to me, feel like give it value, is set up new rules for Star Wars that don't necessarily affect how it ends, but give new stuff to work off of in future movies without having to now set up all that in future movies. Because now the first movie, whatever trilogy comes somewhat after that, whether it's Skywalker related or not, has to set up this. They could have taken what Rian Johnson set up with anyone can have the Force. It belongs to everyone, not the Jedi. They could have taken, like I said, maybe going into not necessarily Grey Jedi, but like a new Jedi with like Kylo and Rey doing it together. Ended the Skywalker saga. They're not going to be in the movies anymore, but what they brought to the galaxy lives on, and you already have that set up for a future trilogy without having to then now go back and explain something. You know what I mean? So like I feel like wrapping up a little package, which is what I feel like JJ wanted to do, limits then what, or like complicates the next trilogy to having to explain more than it would have needed to had this been established earlier on. If that makes sense.
Okay, James, you were very excited to say something a couple minutes ago.
Oh, I just thought it was interesting how it's the end of the Skywalker saga, and it's really not, because she's still a Skywalker now, and how they just lied to you about the whole purpose of the movie.
It's just because she says she's a Skywalker. That's the cap. That's the tribute cap at the end. I honestly, we're not going to see Rey in a movie.
Yep. If
ever, for a long, long time. I could see 30 years from now when they want to cash in Daisy, they decide to go back and do something like that. But otherwise, I think you're not going to see Rey. You might see Rey in some books or something like that and further adventures that way, but that's it. I think the Star Wars saga will stop. Skywalker saga will stop the idea that a trilogy needs to be the way to go.
True.
because we are far like MCU has developed has shown us that we can develop what is it, 18 film, I forget how many films it is in the saga, whatever, shit ton of movies in an episodic serial way. We don't need to have a trilogy because a trilogy is far too limiting to when you, especially look at this 7, 8, and 9. We had to punch in 30 years of history, whatever, between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, introducing new characters, introducing new arcs, establishing old arcs. It was a very limiting process, and then Rian Johnson decides to go off in a different direction and introduce new themes. And then J.J. Abrams was left with an impossible task, I think, which is why I think I value Rise of Skywalker more than most. Is I really feel for J.J. Abrams having an impossible task to handle. But now we have the films, and we have to get rid of that concept of trilogies. We can have a whole saga of films and let it develop one by one by one, almost like the MCU, but not necessarily copying the MCU, but at least in that ballpark where we could visit different universes. They can connect in similar ways, but then eventually, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd say that's where I fault J.J. Abrams, because I don't feel like his role in doing the third movie would be like, scrap whatever you don't like and just go. I feel like as a director in a trilogy, you need to respect what happened before you like, okay, Rian Johnson didn't either. I feel like he didn't like be like, yeah, that's bullshit. He like diverged the story without retconning it, if that makes sense. Like we didn't say in the first movie Rey's parents are Skywalkers, and then Rian Johnson's second movie like no, they're nobody, and then in the third movie he's, you know what I mean? It was never established who her parents were. He took it in a route that J.J. Abrams didn't want to go, but since there was no clear storyline, I feel like J.J. Abrams should have respected what had happened in The Last Jedi, and he could have taken his own way, but in a way that didn't retcon things that happened in Last Jedi. Now, if there's the thing about it not being a trilogy would have helped. Let's say that that's what J.J. Abrams wanted to do. If he could have done 2 movies, I feel like this could have been better, because then he could have had one movie to course correct and then another movie to finish instead of trying to do it all in 2 hours.
The first 45 minutes of this movie is course correction.
So, like, if they didn't limit it to a trilogy, he could have had one other movie to split it up. So if he did course correct, which bothers me, he at least had more time to do it, so it didn't feel so rushed and jam-packed and full of exposition. Because the only way you know what's happening is if they tell you what's happening, because there's not enough time to show you what's happening. And that's where I feel like the movie is flawed, is he just too much in one movie that is, yeah. No more trilogies. Just leave it open-ended.
Yeah, I also think that with Rey's parentage, Rian Johnson wasn't necessarily course correcting from J.J. Abrams as much as he was also telling us, like, why did you care in the first place? You know, like, it says something about us as viewers and about the fan community that we place so much stock, and that the series has kind of conditioned us to think in that way. And Rian Johnson was making a very deliberate point when he, gave us that revelation about her parents. It never mattered. Like, they were nobodies because, they didn't have to be anyone for her to be who she is. And J.J. Abrams, like, he doesn't really explore the idea of her being a granddaughter to Palpatine. Like, I almost thought it was a red herring when Kylo Ren told it to her, because I was like, this changes nothing. Like, it briefly tells us a little bit more about Palpatine's master plan, which changes about 10 times in the last 5 minutes of the movie. But other than that, like, it doesn't really, like, she's briefly flirting with the dark side, but this movie also, like, constantly shows her going out of her way to, like, be nurturing to, like, random strangers, to the effect that it's almost creepy how nice she is to people, that I don't buy her turn to the dark side at all.
Well, in a way,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and also, once again, like, the fact that her possibly turning to the dark side has anything to do with the fact that Palpatine is her grandfather once again betrays what Rian Johnson is setting up, which is that regardless of who her parents are, she barely knows them. She grew up without them. Therefore, her life experience and that thing that has shaped her is really divorced from who her parents are.
But in a way, I mean, let's, like, if you can tackle that, just that little aspect of it, doesn't also, in a roundabout way, it supports Ryan's thing, because you find out that Rey is a Palpatine, and yet you see what she is, you see what she does. Isn't it saying it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your bloodline is? It's a different version It's almost a different version of the same thing. It doesn't matter that you're Palpatine's granddaughter. Leia knows that. Of course, that was a little weird too. Leia knew it supposedly, but I'll go with it. I'll go with it. If we go with it, we should go with what's presented.
I at that point I was like, sure, whatever.
Look at Leia could probably sense the dark side in her that way. That's been kind of established. You got to sense that dark side in her. Maybe that blood. I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. But it supports that concept that she has this dark bloodline in her past, and yet all of her choices have been for the light. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. You get to make the choice, and that's exactly what happens at the end. She doesn't. No matter your Palpatine, she makes the choice to be a Skywalker, to be a light.
I think Rian Johnson already made that point sufficiently, and we don't need to retread that. Especially, we don't need to like unmake his point to make it again, which is kind of what he tried to do. And then B, at the end, she takes the name Skywalker, which I feel is a betrayal of that theme, and is cathartic, and it feels nice, and it gives everyone goosebumps and all that, but it really is unnecessary because it's, once again, she's like, oh, I'm not defining myself by my family, I am defining myself by my childhood icons, who are also brands. And another similarity I want to draw between
Rey. I mean,
I would have rather her just been Rey, like Madonna, just Rey.
Yes,
that's all she.
I think that another similarity I want to draw between this and Endgame is that both films end with declarations of self-actualization that are tied to the brands to which the film is tethered. The declaration, I am Iron Man, means nothing, but it does kind of allow him to declare his own individuality and tie that individuality to a brand that is being sold within the movie. And saying I am Rey Skywalker accomplishes the same thing, because she's essentially saying, like, I am a part of this pop culture icon that you're aware of as consumers, but I'm also my own person. And it's trying to, and this is something that I probably should not be articulating in 30 seconds, but whatever. It's trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it's trying to say once again that the thing that ultimately made her great was her adulation of these characters that the films have always been about. And I find that to be kind of shallow at the end of the day.
Oh,
I do want to back.
That's what a good night's sleep does.
I love the idea of what JJ originally set up with, look at these rabid fanboys who idolize these fictional characters, and how they just like the people who focus on that are almost doing more wrong than good. I love that, but like what you said, then rewarding it in the end just seems very counterintuitive. And the same thing happens. It's just sort of like, oh, look at that. She's a granddaughter of Palpatine, where I feel like this lineage and fan obsession sort of line up together, because it is like, you are nothing until you are everything. I don't see why the film needed to like betray its own points.
I do think another thing we have to bring back is like going back to the crawl aspect of it. We talked about the crawl, and I talked about how it's a serial from the day. When it comes down to it at the end, isn't this what it's supposed to be? Good versus evil, Skywalker. It's supposed to be the wrapping up of the saga that way. And I'm trying. How do I explain this the way? I almost feel like the Last Jedi's, which I love the Last Jedi as a film. I did. I feel like in this part of the saga, it doesn't fit in terms of what had come before and how you want to finish that saga. It's like having pizza, and instead of the eighth slice of pizza, it's, I don't know, like a hamburger, a gourmet hamburger. It's a great meal, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the pizza. If you know what I'm saying.
But hamburger pizza is not that bad.
No, I'm saying. As I'm trying to say, it just seems like it's a different story, and we have the story here in the same saga, in the same universe, but not in this saga.
But the difference is that, like, this is as if you ordered that hamburger off the kids menu, and then 30 years later you're still eating off the kids menu, and your taste buds have not changed in the slightest.
Yes, Thank
Like-
you.
But it's not for
That's
me
all for
anymore.
me.
It's for the it's for my kids that I'm still bringing to the hamburger and getting the off the kids
But-
meal for my kids.
So you
Most
just reaching into your
restaurants
kids'
have
Happy
a-
Meals, just stealing their fries. Say, fuck you, I
Yeah.
like these.
I'm going, hey, that looks pretty good. I'll have a little slice of that. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love this shit.
And my tastes have changed. I don't want the kid meal anymore.
By the way, I'm
And,
not
and
being a
honestly,
Papa
my
hamburger
kids
people.
don't want the kid meal anymore because they've
Yeah.
seen it. They've had it enough times too where they're bored too. They're like, I've seen
And-
the original trilogy and the prequels. Like my daughter didn't like The Rise of Skywalker. She's 9 and she didn't like it for the same reasons I did. Even like
My kids
Also, here's the thing.
loved it.
her,
I wanna-
she's the audience.
Favorite movie.
I also want to emphasize something because this is something that I'm getting the sense in the wake of The Last Jedi. I saw a lot of people like kind of there's this weird resurgence of popularity for the prequels, and I want to reiterate that the prequels are not good films. However, they are entertainingly stupid, and unlike the sequel trilogy, they've given us a treasure trove of memes because of George Lucas's bizarre, clunky dialogue. And if The Rise of Skywalker was going to be this batshit crazy roller coaster, I would have liked for it to be at least entertainingly stupid. And aside from the Hux plot line, I don't feel that we got much of that either. There were moments with Palpatine, like the early stuff with Palpatine, where he's like, "I made Snoke," and then you see just like a whole container of like prototypes.
What was that?
I think that was meant to show that that's how Palpatine came back. I think that's part of it. I think there's,
Yeah,
like,
he
floating things
literally
involved
like
and-
made Snoke. Like he was just like, all right, so a little more sodium and some like
I
As we
think
all
he could have
know,
made him a
very
little bit
salty.
more intact looking if he put.
he's like, oh yes, the facial scar on this one is just a centimeter off. Next time I'll get it right.
We need to make him look really grizzled. He has gone through some shit. Otherwise, people aren't going to listen to him.
He doesn't sound enough like Andy Serkis yet. Yeah, it's so. Yeah, I mean, going by our food metaphor, the prequel trilogy was like if you take a guy who's been working for a week at Burger King and then try to have him make a gourmet meal. Like you give him like Gordon Ramsay's menu and it's like recreate all of this Burger King, and that's what that was, and the results are hilarious. Like, they do a whole reality TV shows about bad cooks, and this is a real confident chef making food off the kids menu is what we just saw with the Rise of Skywalker. It's like, he can do it well, but at the end of the day, it's still off the kids menu, and you're limited in your ingredients.
Yes.
So J.J. Abrams decided, okay, I have very few ingredients. I'm going to use all of them and use them a lot.
I'm not going to use anything unique. No spices, something like that. Tons of bland meat and bread. Not going to put any seasoning in there. Just bland, but lots of it, because that's how it felt to me. Just nothing.
I mean, not
new.
everyone in the movie was white, Kelsey. Like,
that is true. No.
Okay, so
I live in Boston, all right, so I know about underseasoned food.
Fair enough.
all right, so here wrapping up because we have gone over an hour. Let's get some like final thoughts. What do y'all think about doing this anime style? Like, do you have like a fist pump moment for the movie?
I have several.
Because I can tell you my single one, my only one I ever had in the movie.
Okay, go ahead.
And it's when Rey shot the lightning out of her hands and when she thought she killed Chewie. I thought that was a great moment for just it's giving weight to the film, giving characters consequences, and having Rey touch the dark side and think, what if? Granted, they threw that away at the end. But in the moment, as in the progress through the film, I thought it was really interesting what the conversation they could have started, but they didn't. But a great moment.
Okay. Kelsey, you have any fist pumps that you like besides Adam Driver?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this for a second, and I'm going to do something. It's a mix of a fist bump and a complaint together, because the scene goes like this. Okay, I love the ending scene when Ben comes running. He's sliding across there. He's got his lightsaber. He's just different. He's got kind of like quirky personality. And he comes. And he's there for the help. That was fist bump. Like, yeah, he's here. Then he's gone instantly. So then I'm pissed because I'm like, what'd you just do? That was it'd be a great moment of Skywalker and Palpatine fighting against evil. And then the whole scene happens. They bring him back. There is that wonderful moment where he brings Rey back, and you could just see him being Ben again. He's smiling. Fist bump. I'm excited. I'm like, oh, there he is. They kiss. I'm already getting kind of cranky again.
No.
And then he dies.
But
Hello,
I just want
Romeo
to
and
say,
Juliet.
I just want to say, my theater actually erupted into laughter when he died because it was so awkward.
It's Romeo and Juliet. He's dead now. She's dead now. He's dead now. He like.
Dude, if he actually killed himself because he thought she was dead, that would be so.
Well, really, he
weirdly
kind
hilarious.
of did because he died bringing her back to life. It's like, I'm bringing you back to life, and I'm dead. So like he knew he was gonna die saving her. I feel like he knew, like, because that's why he was like happy he had that moment, and then he drifted off to death. So like that moment is both a fist bump for me, and then also I literally swore many expletives in my head during that moment because it pissed me off and made me happy at the same time. So sort of a fist bump. I like the Ben Solo parts.
That is true, Haskell. That is kind of something that I was at the back of my mind this whole movie. It's like, dude, this guy's like killed a lot of people, and she likes she's only known him as this evil murderer. Like she met him because he captured and tortured her. Like that was their first date.
Hot.
Okay.
So hot.
So I don't know what kind of
Okay,
guys
we're gonna go there.
Shut
That
up.
kind of. But
I don't know what kind of guys that were on Jakku that she meets this like torturous space Nazi and is like, oh, upgrade, baby.
Hunker plot,
But-
baby.
Oh, is that? Have you seen him? 1/4 portion. Yeah.
Hunker plot.
I mean, I can't really blame her.
He wanted to give
so-
Rey the whole portion.
Maybe she's maybe Rey is actually related to Padme in some way because Padme did fall for Anakin
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, she really
slicing
is a
the beetle.
Skywalker.
She is a Skywalker.
They
Right.
have a weird fixation for
Like our
for-
toxic men. Yep.
I do think that the whole Star Wars saga has had a really weird thing in which like their most virtuous characters turn evil on a dime, kind of. Like, you know, even in Return of the Jedi, where like Palpatine's like, oh, if you kill your father, you'll turn evil. It's like, what if he just kills his dad and then kills you and walks home and has a sandwich and calls it a day? Like, what is it about killing his dad that's also going to be like, oh, I should just join his
bone him.
boss and like, blow up my friends?
As we can see in the Schmo canon universe, everyone hates bad people. You steal a bagel, you go on a date with Mona. It's how the world works. The great women fall for just the assholes.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, they met what?
I'm
Like,
coming for you,
four
Ben Goddard.
I'm a good
And in
example.
most of them, he tried to kill her.
Body run.
Come on, guys,
Yeah.
that's hot. I mean, like,
Right.
being on risk of death at all times. Yeah.
Wait,
I
let's
feel like
wait for the
maybe
live
even,
chat to
like-
roll in.
Maybe even like the time they fought Palpatine together, she's like, "Oh man, the spark is already like, you know, the honeymoon phase is ending because now we're not even trying to kill each other. We're like killing some old guy."
What the hell?
Yeah.
Wait. Samantha in the live chat. He wanted to give Ray. Wanted to give Ray
Yeah.
full portions.
Yep.
That's what I said about
Yep.
2.5 minutes
Yes,
ago.
you missed that page.
I'm
If you're
slow and I'm
listening.
busy reading the live chat with the hashtag fuck Raylo. Thank you, Danielle, and anyone else who I'm missing. That was
I don't know
okay.
why we're there.
That's maybe the worst part about this movie, which is
Oh, wait.
to say.
Let's get Michael's fist pump if he had any. Did you have any
Okay,
fist pump
go ahead.
moments, Michael?
Literally every moment that General Hux was on screen.
Fair enough.
Still waiting for my Hux spinoff. I would have been fine if they had snuck in Donald Gleason's voice as one of the Jedi at the end. And just got Hux going like, "Yeah, get him, Rey."
He was a Jedi the whole time. I love it.
Oh, and tell Kylo Ren to go fuck himself when you're done. Yeah, pretty much like I just unabashedly love Hux because I just think he's adorable and hilarious.
Okay.
Baby Yoda's got nothing on my
Baby
baby
Hux.
boy.
Cut
General
his
Hux.
camera. Cut his camera.
Yeah, I know that's blasphemy, but I will
It's
also say
wrong.
that Lando had nothing to do, but he was delightful to watch in this movie. Um,
Lando's right.
it made me wish he had more to do, but then again, I would watch just like an hour special of him just talking to me and soothing me to sleep.
I
So,
do wish
yeah,
we called him
I-
Chewbacca. I wish that was in there. Good to see you, Chewbacca. Like he did in Empire. That would have been great.
and Han.
Do you think that like Lando gets the Falcon again, and like Han's dead, and he just walks in there and he's like, yes,
Mine.
finally, it's
Yes,
mine.
my dead robot girlfriend's brain. I can now drive.
Who
her
gets the
again.
last laugh
Yeah.
now, Han? You dead motherfucker.
Love
Well, that was I have a couple fist points. I admit I'm a traditionalist with this. I get everybody's points, but I still love the stuff. Even though everybody hates it, and everybody here hates it, I loved when Lando shows up with everybody at in the final battle. I did love that moment. I thought that was a great, well done as far as the moment itself. Logistically, I get the problems with it, but I love that. I also loved the Jedi speak. That was the only thing. One thing about the whole movie that I wish it had wrapped up the saga a little bit better rather than just wrapping up the trilogy, and having all the voices of Liam Neeson, motherfucker,
All the Liam
Samuel L.
Neesons.
Jackson,
The Commuter,
all of the
Taken,
all
Schindler's
of it.
List was
Even
a weird
having
Ahsoka
version.
Tano.
Ahsoka and Kanan voice in there. That
Here's a question: how much do you think all of those people got paid for that single line of dialogue?
that is a very good
More
question.
than I would have gotten paid. For
I bet Ahsoka did it for free though. I bet you Ahsoka
Here,
like
I bet
How much? How much do they have to pay Samuel L. Jackson to just say the word "Ray" several times?
I bet
Probably
you
more than
they,
anyone else in the movie.
they got paid in hamburger pizza. Boom, running
Hamburger
joke.
pizza.
And with that, we do have to cut things off because a few of us do have somewhere else to be. Michael, thank you for being on. You were wonderful. Glad to have you back.
Yep, and I apologize for all of the viewers. I've just lost you.
Absolutely.
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Next time we'll try and bring the lawn Harris just to like share the professor energy.
And if we can make it through
that
James,
that hack.
if we can make it through James, then you're fine.
Yeah, if we haven't lost everybody due to this person, then we're not going to lose anybody.
I do want to thank James for really taking a lot of the heat off of me because there's really the bar is set so low right now that I'm fine doing whatever.
All right, Kelsey, where can we find you?
All right, you can find me at KelseyKins90 on Twitter and Instagram. I also run the Call to Action podcast Instagram, so you can see me posting on there. TeePublic, we've got merch. Hopefully some new designs in the works. We'll keep you posted. But yeah, get your Call to Action gear. We love seeing you guys in it.
James, did you already say where we could find you? I lost it during our times of bashing you. But so where can we find you, James?
You can find me on Twitter at TemEQ Film Nerd. It's at TEMEKU Film Nerd. Also, go and check me out on Abby Friel's channel in like 10 minutes. We're going to do a mock draft and spectacular coverage.
That's right.
Also,
Cool.
I just want to make sure y'all remember, if you're a patron, award nominations, get voting.
James
wins.
just gave y'all like 3 other avenues through which to bash him, so use them wisely.
No, 2 of them. Don't bash me on the awards because we
But you love
Just-
us.
Right in,
Don't punish
fuck you,
us for his
Spence, for all of
mistakes.
the awards.
you love most of us.
You could type in next to it, except James Spence or something.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sure we'll still get it, and I'll just make sure not to print out him a slice. It's fine.
You're a good sport, James. You're a good
I do.
sport.
I do want to say that y'all probably have it in the bag from what I'm seeing.
Well, I appreciate that sentiment. I will not say that.
I hope
Thank
so.
you. I hope so.
People keep saying that, and I keep getting more worried every time I hear it.
I know it's almost like I get to the point like everybody keeps saying it, but like I hope everybody
Gonna be
decides not
upset.
to vote for us. Like and vote. Oh, they got it in the bag, so I'll just
Knock
give
on
so
wood.
much
Vote for
vote.
somebody else.
Knock on wood.
Anyway, Michael, where can we find you on a more ongoing basis?
Well, I lurk around the chats here sometimes, and I'm on Facebook, and maybe looking at getting published in the near future. Possibly. We'll see if I'm not too busy.
I'll keep us.
Things are up in the air. So I'll keep people appraised of that. But yeah, in general, you can find me possibly here more often. James and I have been talking about things that we can do over the off season. So I will probably not be gone long unless your viewership is so horrified at the prospect of seeing me again that I am never heard from again.
Fair enough. Okay. You can find me at Paul_Denuzzo on Twitter. I say Denuzzo because that's how it's spelled. It is Denuzzo. I'll pronounce it. But I also want to know if you're not sick of me talking about Star Wars yet, you'll get another chance, 2 more chances this week to hear me talking about Star Wars on Class Action, which is the show G and Richard Eric Jarvie do on the Action Industries YouTube channel. tomorrow night, we're going to do our little shorter review of Rise of Skywalker, but also putting forth the prequels trilogy versus the sequel trilogy. And then on Saturday, we'll have a special bonus episode of Class Action while Ben and Drew are away. We are set to play. We are going to be ranking the entire theatrically released live-action Star Wars films from bottom to top with myself, Richard Derek Jarvie, and two special guests from within Action Industries. We'll let you guys know that then. And of course, you can always find me on Shield Action on a weekly basis, except this week because we are taking a week off. And yes, come vote for us. Hit that like and subscribe button. We should always do this. One last thing. Last question. Gaping Chest Wound or Rise of Skywalker? Of course, I will definitely say Rise of Skywalker, because I would do that even if it wasn't a game like Gaping Chest Wound. But Kelsey, that's actually a question for you.
I still liked Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
I just had critiques, but I did like it. So I would pick it over a Gaping Chest Wound.
Michael?
Well, General Hux does not appear once in a gaping chest wound, so
I would hope he doesn't. That'd be a little painful. That's a big
Like
man.
aliens kind of thing.
And James, go ahead. What about you? Gaping Chest Wound or Rise of Skywalker?
I would prefer to not be murdered,
So you choose Rise of Skywalker too. All right.
Woo, it's
but also Rise of Skywalker sucks. I'll give a gaping chest wound to someone else. Gaping chest wound. There's your answer, Paul.
All right. All right.
And I want to give it a shout out to Paul as well for being the only person on this panel who liked the Rise of Skywalker. It's not an easy thing to be the contrarian, and you did that very admirably. So props to you, man.
Yes, you did.
Thank you. I will thank you very much. Thank you. I will also say I appreciate everybody. We maintained a level of discourse which is not seen very often on the internet, shall we say? And
internet.
This is how you can talk about things. It's great.
Can happen. So, all right. Take care, everybody. We salute you. Have a great night. Bye now.